In last week's video I was talking about some things that I'm going to be doing in my yard this fall. One thing that I didn't mention was that I have some tall fescue clumps that have been growing in my yard for the last couple seasons. I want to try to get rid of those if possible before I do my renovation. Tall fescue is a cool season grass just like bluegrass and ryegrass, however it doesn't have the exact same appearance. Tall fescue grows in clumps and has a much wider blade than ryegrass or bluegrass. Because of this, when you mix all these together, you don't always get a uniform appearance. What I want to do is try to get rid of these big clumps of fescue and some of the fescue that's mixed into my front and side yard before I'm going to do my fall overseeding. Now because tall fescue does a little bit better in drought than ryegrass or bluegrass does, I have some of these clumps of fescue growing in my yard still. They're still green right now while the rest of my grass is dormant. Because of that, this should give me an opportunity to try to get rid of this fescue without damaging the rest of the grass too much. My options on getting rid of this would be to try to dig up these clumps of fescue or to use a chemical that will kill it. Glyphosate is the chemical ingredient that's long been used in Roundup. Glyphosate is still used in Roundup, but now there's some generic forms out there that you can buy that maybe aren't quite as expensive. This is a non-selective herbicide, so that means it's going to kill the grass and the weeds that you spray it with. So you have to be pretty careful with this chemical. In order for this chemical to work its best, the plant needs to be green and growing. Because most of my grass that I want to keep is dormant right now, I wanted to experiment with spraying just these clumps of fescue that are still green. Hopefully that will not cause too much damage to the grass around it, but even if it does, obviously I'm going to be renovating it. This is a good opportunity though to both see where my fescue is at exactly in my yard because of everything being dormant, and also just try to spray those areas and not damage the rest of the yard. So that's some generic glyphosate that I picked up from Home Depot. You can get it pretty much any of the big box stores or online. And you'll need to follow your particular directions on your bottle. For mine, it recommends that if you're going to be doing some lawn renovation where you want to kill all the grass and the weeds, then you want to use 2.5 ounces per gallon. I'm going to be mixing this into a cheap pump sprayer, and I don't know if I need to use a gallon, so I might cut that in half and use half of a gallon. Before you do all this, it's a good idea to put some water in your tank and just adjust your spray nozzle how you want it to spray. This way you can get it all dialed in before you put the chemical in it. One other thing to mention with this chemical and these pump sprayers is that you don't want to use any other chemical in here after you've put glyphosate in this container. I made the mistake of doing this last year, and even though I rinsed it out and it cleaned it out well with soap, went to spray some weeds later in the fall and it ended up killing some pretty large sections of my backyard, which I had to fix this year, so definitely do not do that and learn from my mistake. Now, as I mentioned, make sure you mix everything according to the directions on your bottle. It's a good idea to wear some gloves since you don't want to get this chemical on your hands. I use a handy little measuring cup from an old bottle of Weed Be Gone that I had. You can use pretty much any measuring cup, but just make sure that you put the proper amount in there. And from there, I also like to use a little bit of blue marking dye. This just allows you to see where you sprayed and make sure that you're not over applying in certain areas. I'll have a link to this specific dye that I'm using if you want to check that out. From there, I just pretty much walk in a grid pattern in my yard, spraying the clumps of fescue that I see. If you walk in a pattern, then you know where you've been and you know where you're going. Also, when you get close to landscape beds or something that you know you don't want to spray or have any overspray go onto, just use something to shield your spray a little bit. Something like a piece of cardboard or something like that will work, just to make sure that you don't get any spray on something that you definitely do not want to kill. That is it on spraying the tall fescue clumps in your yard if you want to get rid of those. It's going to take a little bit here to see our results. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.